The court, not in court. What two new coaches keep shocking everyone across the conference? Find out more about Bucky Ball and Baby Pearl next on Scarbo Knows. It's the last week of January 2026. So, of course, we're talking SEC basketball and two coaches and two teams that are shocking the rest of the league. Bucky McMillan in Texas A&M, Stephen Pearl in Auburn. Bucky completely new to the SEC. Stephen sliding over one seat from assistant coach to head coach at Auburn and surprising a lot of people, including me, Kevin Scarbinski. Glad to be with you today here on Scarbo Knows. I am Scarbo. Glad you could join us on the Sidelines.live network with executive producer Brendan Martin. Hope you will check out all the great shows on the channel. And thank you to our sponsor, Money Management Services, Birmingham's financial services firm since 1992. The Rice family, good friends of mine. They will take great care of you. You can check out the QR code on the screen, and we'll hear more from them later in the show. So let's go. Bucky McMillan and Stephen Pearl. They are two of the three new coaches in the SEC this year, along with Sean Miller at Texas. They are two of the three youngest head coaches in the SEC. Stephen Pearl's 38, Bucky is 42. And then, of course, Todd Golden at Florida coming off a national championship. He's 40. So the young guns are getting it done. Early in the conference season, we're about one-third of the way through SEC basketball in terms of conference play. And let's be honest, I don't know that anyone saw what's happening, what has happened, what continues to happen in terms of the Aggies and the Tigers. You know, in the preseason SEC basketball poll, Florida was picked to repeat as champion. Well, actually, Auburn won the regular season last year. Florida won the tournament. And then Florida won the national championship. Florida was picked as number one. Auburn was picked sixth. Not terribly low, but Texas A&M was picked to finish 13th. And yet, at the moment, they're in first place alone in the conference. No surprise to those of us who have known Bucky McMillan for a long, long time. And we'll tell you a little bit more about him as we go along. So what just happened over the weekend? Both teams posted really big wins. We'll start with A&M. They just blew the doors off of South Carolina, 92-69. It was the third straight SEC win for the Aggies. They've won 9 of their last 10 games. And against the best three-point percentage defense in the conference, they made 17 three-pointers. That's an SEC record for Texas A&M, the most they've ever had in the conference in a single game. That was one off the school record for made three-pointers, which this team set earlier in the year against Manhattan when they knocked down 18 from beyond the arc. So Bucky Ball just continues to roll. And in a truly striking occurrence, Auburn went to Gainesville, where it had not won since 1996, when Cliff Ellis was the head coach at Auburn. And Auburn controlled the game. Auburn was up 15 at the half, stretched the lead to 18 early in the second half. Florida did what you would expect Florida to do. They made a run at them. They came back strong. They tied the game. And then Auburn was the tougher team down the stretch. Keyshawn Hall had 22 in the first half, finished with 24. He was the co-SEC player of the week. That was the third straight SEC win for the Tigers. And as we said, snapped UF's 16-game home winning streak and the first win for Auburn at Florida in 30 years. 30 years. Think about that. That's the one place that Auburn has struggled. Even as Bruce Pearl brought the program to prominence, they couldn't win in Gainesville. And usually those games weren't close. So that was a statement that Auburn made Saturday. After going on the road and beating Ole Miss in the midweek, they stay on the road. They go to Gainesville. and really controlled the game for the most part, with the exception of Florida's second half comeback. And the way that Auburn answered that, the way that they pulled away at the end to win by 9, said a lot about what this team is made of and the job that Stephen Pearl is doing. So what does that mean for the SEC standings? Where are we right now? About a third of the way through conference play. Let's look at the SEC standings. And I guarantee you, no one outside of maybe Bucky McMillan's family, maybe former teammates at Mountain Brook, former players who played for him when he coached at Mountain Brook High School, when he coached at Samford University, maybe some of his old Birmingham Southern College teammates. No one expected to see Texas A&M atop the SEC standings, and yet that is where they sit today. All alone, they were tied with Florida, but obviously Florida dropped down with that loss to Auburn. So let's look at those SEC standings, Brendan, right now, and some shockers there. Texas A&M, as we said, 16-1, not just or 6-1 in the league, but 16-4 overall. They lead Arkansas, Florida, and Kentucky by a game. They're up 2 games on Vanderbilt, Georgia, Missouri, and Auburn. And there's Alabama sitting there at 3-3 after losing to Tennessee over the weekend. We're going to talk a little bit about the Charles Bediako situation later in the show as well. But we're going to focus on Texas A&M and Auburn today. And let's talk about Auburn. Auburn has gotten overshadowed this basketball season for a lot of different reasons. One, because after going to the Final Four last year, where they lost to Florida in the national semifinals, and then the Gators closed the deal against Houston in the title game, won their first national championship since going back-to-back in 06 and 07, no one expected Auburn to be a contender this year. They lost everyone on the roster but Tahad Pettiford. All 5 starters. Remember, Pettiford came off the bench last year as a freshman. He was a great shot in the arm, especially as a scorer, as an explosive player. He could put up points in a hurry. He was at his best in the big games. He's the only player that came back on the roster. So Stephen Pearl had to rebuild the roster. Now, of course, he did that with the help of Bruce Pearl, because Bruce Pearl did not retire until the day practice started, ensuring that his son Stephen, his top assistant, would get the head coaching job. And that made a lot of people, including me, roll our eyes a little bit. And we wondered, Auburn has become one of the better basketball programs in the country under Bruce Pearl. And yes, Stephen Pearl was the associate head coach. He was his dad's right-hand man. He has worked his way up on the staff during Bruce Pearl's 11 years as the head coach there. But you're Auburn. You just went to the Final Four. You've been to 2 Final Fours since 2019. You are now a national program. You're attracting national talent like Tahad Pettiford. Shouldn't you have conducted a national search to see who else might be interested in the job, who else you might have been able to hire? Now, John Cohen, the athletic director, when he announced the promotion of Stephen Pearl back at the start of practice, he said that they did do a national search. But all signs pointed back down the hall to Stephen Pearl. And again, that was met with a lot of skepticism, a lot of cynicism. There's no doubt that Bruce Pearl helped engineer it to get Stephen the job. You can understand that if you're a father. Maybe you can understand that if you've been part of a team and your top assistant has been integral to the success of the program, and certainly Stephen was, especially as a defensive coordinator. But you had to feel like there was going to be a drop-off, right? And so people have, from the very start, used the word nepotism about this hire. They accused Bruce Pearl, John Cohen, Auburn in general, of engaging in nepotism in promoting Stephen Pearl, believing, as I'll be honest, I believed, that there were better qualified, more experienced head coaches they could have hired. And so this nickname has been hung around the neck of Stephen Pearl, Nepo Baby. He's a Nepo Baby. He's 38. Nepotism, Nepo Baby. But he's turning out to be a boss baby. And by the way, if you have not seen the animated movie Boss Baby, I think they made a sequel as well. Outstanding work. You got to check it out. Alec Baldwin plays the voice of the Boss Baby. It's just a delightful movie, especially with these freezing temperatures. If you don't want to get outside, you have nothing to do, and there's not a good game on at night, put on Boss Baby. I think you'll enjoy it. But we've got to start. Maybe we should stop calling Stephen Pearl Nepo Baby. And if he keeps this up, we're going to have to start referring to him as Boss Baby. Look what he's done against some of the better coaches in the country this season. He's faced 8 different coaches that have taken a team to the Final Four. He's 5-3 in those games. He's beaten Rick Pitino in St. John's, Dana Altman in Oregon, John Calipari in Arkansas, Chris Beard in Ole Miss, and just Saturday, Todd Golden in Florida. And then against coaches with a national championship on their resume, he's undefeated. He's 3-0 against Pitino, Calipari, and Golden. Now, part of the way you judge a coach is how he competes against the best in the business. Rick Pitino just won his 900th game as a head coach. He may be the best college coach of all time. He also may be a vampire who will never die. We can't confirm that, but we have our suspicions. But we know the man can coach basketball. He's been coaching it at a high level for a long time. People in this state, Alabama fans in particular, don't want to hear the name Rick Pitino. And they have really bad flashbacks to 1987 when one of the best teams in Alabama history, which won the SEC regular season and won the SEC tournament, rolled into the Sweet 16 and got shot down by Billy Donovan and Delray Brooks and Providence, coached by Rick Pitino, when Rick Pitino was just a Boss Baby all his own. So if you can compete against the best of the best, Todd Golden's on that short list with what he's done at Florida, leading to that national championship last year. John Calipari, of course, has coached at a high level for a long time. And Auburn absolutely ran Arkansas out of the gym in Neville Arena a couple of weeks ago. That really started this run that the Tigers are on. And that game wasn't even competitive. Arkansas didn't put up much of a fight. Auburn jumped on them early and steamrolled them virtually from start to finish. So you've got to give Stephen Pearl all kinds of credit. And then, by the way, they weren't playing very well defensively, and he bemoaned the fact game after game during the non-conference, they were giving up far too many points, far too many easy looks to far too many teams. But look how they've turned that around. In the last 3 games, they've given up 67 points to South Carolina, 66 to Ole Miss on the road, and 67 to Florida. That's the second fewest points Florida has scored all year long. Only Duke held them to fewer points, and that was 66 when the Blue Devils beat the Gators in a close game in Cameron Indoor. So the defense has picked up considerably, and that is Stephen Pearl's area of expertise. So you have to give him a lot of credit. And then you throw on top of that, they just got some pure scorers on that team, led by Keyshawn Hall, who is a walking bucket. As we said, he scored 22 in the first half at Florida. 22 by himself on the home floor of the defending national champions. That is elite. Now, Florida turned it around in the second half. They denied him. He didn't get as many good looks. He only scored 2. But there are other scorers on that team, like Keyshawn Murphy from right here in Birmingham. He had a nice game. Kevin Overton, Todd Pettiford, we know what he can do. He can light it up in a hurry. So Auburn will score points. And if they play defense at this level going forward, never thought I'd say this late in the season, they could be a contender down the stretch in the SEC. So give Stephen Pearl his flowers. Stop using the word nepotism to refer to him getting that job only because his dad was the head coach before him. Maybe we should start recognizing that he kind of sort of knows what he's doing. Now, again, it's early. It's 2/3 of the way through his first season. Not saying he's going to be Bruce Pearl. He's going to succeed the way Bruce Pearl did at Auburn. But he has certainly opened a lot of eyes. Maybe not as many eyes as Bucky McMillan at Texas A&M. Now, if you're like me and you've been part of the Birmingham and state of Alabama basketball scene for a long time, you've known what Bucky's all about. You know the man is a basketball savant. You've heard the story about his dad when he was at a young age dropping him off at a rough and tumble gym where they played pickup games. Much older guys played pickup games. And his dad kept dropping him off in the morning in the summer. And he'd pick him up at the end of the day. And his dad would ask how it went. And Bucky would say, they wouldn't let me play. Said I was too small, too scrawny, too young. And the next day, his dad took him right back. Same thing happened the next day and the next day. And finally, after about 4 or 5 days, they let Bucky play. And Bucky, because he was not the most talented athlete, but he worked his tail off. He played with maximum effort. He got a lot of floor burns. And he earned playing time in those pickup games. And his dad taught him a lesson about effort and energy and belief in yourself. And that's the way he's coached. He hasn't always had the most talented players. He doesn't have the most talented roster in the SEC this year. But he's in first place 7 games into the conference season. Now, they haven't had the most rugged conference schedule yet. Gets a lot tougher coming up. They get the midweek off this week. Then they go to Georgia and to Alabama back-to-back. And then Florida rolls into College Station. So they're going to really be tested more than they have the entire conference season over the next week and a half, 2 weeks. But something tells me they'll be up to the task. They're not going to go 3-0. If they go 3-0 against that stretch, then you got to start putting them in the top 15, top 10. I'm not suggesting they will. But they have overachieved to such a degree because remember, Buzz Williams left Texas A&M to go to Maryland. And Bucky McMillan got the job late in College Station. The transfer portal was almost closed. There were very few players left. He was able to cobble together a roster. Maybe the most talented player he brought in, Mackenzie Mbako from Indiana. He's hurt, out for the year. He hasn't been a factor. And yet this collection of ragtag individuals, that's not doing them justice. That's unfair. Jakari Lane was outstanding for North Alabama last year. They were co-champs in the ASUN. He brought in Jakari. He brought in one of his Sanford players. He brought in Rylan Griffin from Kansas, who, of course, Alabama fans remember is a 3-and-D guy, can knock down shots. He just brought in this collection of individuals, Pop Isaacs from Creighton, Ruben Dominguez from Spain, who Texas A&M proudly says on its website has played 150 professional games overseas. And it just works. And in a game last week, I can't remember who it was they beat. Oh, Mississippi State. And Josh Hubbard from Mississippi State, who's the second leading scorer in the league, turned to one of the A&M players and said, do you guys ever stop pressing? I'm getting tired. And A&M was up big at the time. And the A&M player said to him, no, sorry. We don't stop pressing. As long as the game's going on, we're going to press you. They're going to press you when the game starts. They're going to press you till the game ends. They're going to press you if they're up 20 points. They're going to press you if they're down 20 points. Now, all the pressure is different. It comes from different places with different levels of intensity. But there will be pressure. And you think you're in shape until you face that pressure. And eventually, this is the theory, of course, you will wilt under that pressure. And that's exactly what's happening. And A&M, just as we said, just ran South Carolina out of the gym in Reed Arena on Saturday. Now, South Carolina is one of the lesser teams in the SEC. But as I said, they were the best three-point percentage defense in the league. And A&M made 17 from deep. 17. And that's not even the best shooting day they've had this year. They made 18 earlier. That's what they're going to do. They're going to press you. They're going to push the ball up the floor. They're going to look for the first good shot. They're going to take threes or they're going to shoot at the rim and nothing in between if they can help it. That's Bucky ball, as it was dubbed some time ago. It worked in high school where he won 5 state championships at Mountain Brook High School in the state of Alabama. It worked in college when Martin Newton, the Samford athletic director, had the vision to understand that Bucky McMillan was not a high school coach, and Bucky ball was not a high school style of play. Bucky's a winning coach, and that's a winning style of play. And it worked at Samford, where they won multiple, I think 3 Southern Conference championships, something they'd never done in the program's history. They got to the NCAA tournament for the first time in a quarter century. And if not for a bad call against Kansas 2 years ago, who knows how far they would have gone. They could have beaten the Jayhawks, and they almost did anyway, despite that all-ball, maximum effort, chase down block from behind late in the game when Kansas was trying to dunk and put a cap on the game. They called a foul. KU made 2 free throws, and Samford came up just short. But that's what Bucky McMillan teams do. They make you work, and they make you work, and they make you work until you ask one of their players, do you guys ever stop pressing? Because I'm getting tired. And it's even more delicious to look at the contrast between what Bucky McMillan is doing at Texas A&M this year and what Buzz Williams is not doing at Maryland. Let's look at that comparison, Brendan. Let's look at Bucky ball against the buzzkill that is Buzz Williams basketball. And I say buzzkill because it is like watching grass grow, paint dry, going to the dentist, getting a shot of Novocaine. It's not fun to watch. Yes, it can be successful, but it is tedious. And basketball should never be tedious. But even worse, it shouldn't be an 8-12 record in your first year at Maryland overall, a 1-8 record in the Big Ten in your first year at Maryland overall. You shouldn't be in 16th place. Oh, wait, he's tied for 16th place in the 18-team Big Ten. Meanwhile, A&M 16-4 overall, 6-1 in the SEC, and in first place in this year, maybe the second best league overall behind the Big 12. But still a league that's probably going to put 10 teams in the NCAA tournament, and A&M is going to be one of them. Just amazing. And if Bucky McMillan isn't the front runner for SEC Coach of the Year right now, you're not paying attention. Start paying attention. Bucky ball is legit. Bucky McMillan is a big-time winner, and he's going to be as long as he coaches basketball. I've seen it for years. I've believed it for years, and nothing has changed. Only the venue, only the level. It worked at the highest level of high school basketball in Alabama. It worked in the Southern Conference, and now it's working in the SEC. And think about this. And this game has kind of gotten overshadowed, but it was really one of the games of the year in the SEC so far when Texas A&M went to Auburn. What is it, a month ago now? Seems like it, not quite that long. But that game really told you what Stephen Pearl and Auburn are about. It told you what Bucky McMillan and Texas A&M are about. 90-88. Texas A&M walked out of Neville Arena with a victory. People would call it controversial, but maybe it wasn't as controversial if you know all the details. And, of course, in that game, Auburn had a big lead. Texas A&M had scored only 45 points in the first 27 minutes. Okay? Think about that. 45 points in the first 27 minutes for one of the top 10 scoring offenses in the country. And then in the last 13 minutes, when they turned up the pressure and they started hitting threes, they scored 45 more points in the last 13 minutes after scoring 45 in the first 27 minutes. That is a quintessential example of what Bucky ball is all about. And so Texas A&M came back from a huge deficit. They put together a very comfortable lead, but Auburn didn't roll over. Auburn didn't cry uncle. Auburn didn't say, you guys ever going to stop pressing? They kept battling. Next thing you know, the game goes down to the wire. And there were a couple of close calls on an A&M free throw, intentionally missed. Did it hit the rim? Did it not? And then, of course, it all came down to the last shot. Auburn got a last shot down 2, and Keyshawn Murphy, the big man, with a soft touch, He throws in a shot from, 35, 40 feet and hits nothing but net. And Auburn thinks it's won the game. And then you have a whole scene. They review it, and the basket is ruled no good, that it happened after the buzzer, that the ball was still in Keyshawn Murphy's hands a millisecond too long. And, of course, there was a scene in the arena. You've got fans. Fans, don't stop. Stop with the throwing stuff at officials, at other teams, other players, other coaches. It's not cool. Don't cheer people who do this. There are better ways to take out your frustration. And I will tell you this, because I've seen the videos that the SEC looked at. I've seen the still shots of the video that they have of that final shot, and it was a millisecond late. It was a millisecond late. They timed the amount of time it took to throw the ball in, Keyshawn Murphy to catch it, turn, dip, raise up, release, and it was a millisecond beyond the amount of time left on the clock. So they got the call right. And just FYI, because I did some digging, I did some asking, was the SEC going to put out a statement, because that was such an emotional ending. So many people were watching. So many Auburn fans, after what happened to them during the football season, started to feel like, or continued to feel like, more accurately, that somehow the SEC was out to get them. And I never thought of it from this perspective, but my folks in the SEC office, several of them told me, look, if they put out a statement every time they get something right, where does it end? When do the statements stop? And how do you pick and choose which situations to put out a statement to explain and which ones you don't? And that's why they decided in that situation, because they had clear, visible evidence that the shot was just barely late. So they thought, it's not worth it. We're not going to put out a statement, because that opens up a whole nother can of worms. They also, because they understood the raw emotions of the time, they understood how much that hurt, that loss, stung Auburn. They didn't fine Auburn for fan behavior afterwards. They certainly could have, had they chosen to, but they decided that would have only exacerbated the situation. So they moved on. And to Stephen Pearl and Auburn's credit, they didn't linger on that moment. They didn't linger on that loss. They moved on. And then they kicked Arkansas's butt. And they've won, 4 out of the last 5, 3 out of the last 4. And they look like one of the better teams in the league. And by the way, they're half a game ahead of Alabama in the standings right now. But if that shot was good, if it came a millisecond sooner, you would have a 5-way tie for first place in the SEC at the moment at 5-2 with Auburn, Texas A&M, Kentucky, Arkansas, and Florida. That's how tight the league is this year. That there may be no 1 or 2 elite teams like last year. You're not going to have 4 teams in the Elite 8 as you had last year. You're probably not going to have 2 teams in the Final Four the way you did last year. You're probably not going to have a national championship team out of the SEC this year. Unless, perhaps, the Charles Bediako factor comes into play. We can't talk about SEC basketball in the last week of January of 2026 without touching on Charles Bediako's second debut in college basketball with the Alabama Crimson Tide. Let's look at the Bediako factor and how he fared in his first game back for the second time with Alabama. Of course, Alabama lost the game, Tennessee 79, Alabama 73. Nate Ament, the Tennessee freshman, how do you stop a 6'10 guy with that smooth of a jump shot, that skilled of a toolkit? He gets every shot he wants, and he's starting to play more and more demonstrative. And the more he looks for a shot, the more dangerous Tennessee's going to be. He scored 29. That's his career high in college. This will be his one and only year in college. He's going to be a lottery pick. But let's look at Bediako. Of course, Cliff's Notes version. You know the details by now. He played 2 years at Alabama in 2021-2022, 2022-2023, when Alabama went to the Sweet 16, got upset by San Diego State. They won both SEC championships. They were the number 1 overall seed in the field. They really should have gotten to the Final Four, should have contended for a national championship. They came up short. But Bediako was a key player on that team. He turned pro early, and this is the key for Alabama fans who want to compare this to James Najee at Baylor or Philip Jovich at Auburn or some of these players from overseas who did or didn't play in the G League but did get paid to play basketball, and now they're playing college basketball. There's a key difference here, guys. There's a simple rule that applies to Charles Bediako that doesn't apply to any of these other players. He played college basketball. He put his name in the draft as an early entrant. He kept his name in the draft beyond the deadline to withdraw. And at that point, according to NCAA rules, he became ineligible to play college basketball again. And yet he just played college basketball again because a slick lawyer brought a lawsuit against the NCAA, which is ongoing. They got a temporary restraining order from a very friendly judge in Tuscaloosa who, according to AL.com, good reporting by Michael Casagrande, is a donor to Alabama athletics. If that's not the definition of conflict of interest, I don't know what is. And yet the judge did not recuse himself. He granted Bediako the restraining order, so he was able to play Saturday night. And now, tomorrow, as we record, Tuesday, January 27th, there is a hearing scheduled in that judge's courtroom in Tuscaloosa County to decide whether to grant Charles Bediako an injunction, which will basically allow him to play out the rest of the year. And I said this before he set foot back on the court in Coleman Coliseum. If that happens, look out. If Bediako is allowed to play the rest of the year and Alabama can get somewhere close to healthy, and it's not an excuse to say they played Tennessee without their second leading scorer in Aiden Holloway and without their third leading scorer and leading rebounder and best all-around player, who's going to be a one-and-done, Amari Allen. Those are two pretty big holes in the lineup. So you add in Bediako, but you subtract the other two players, obviously, that has it's a pretty good chance it's going to hurt you. And Alabama lost by 6 on a night Ament had his true coming out party with 29 points. So it's not an excuse. Injuries are reality. And Alabama still had chances to win the game. But the real revelation was Bediako. He played 25 minutes. He scored 13 points and did things that we didn't see him do the last time around. Yeah, the rim running, the shot blocking, the lob dunking, that was all part of his repertoire before he went to the G League. Before he signed an NBA contract but never played an NBA game, bounced around the G League the last 2.5 years. But that move he made halfway through the second half. He catches the ball on the wing, pounds 2 quick dribbles, takes 2 very long strides, and throws down a dunk through contact for an and one. Of course, the place detonated. That was not in his toolkit 3 years ago, the last time he played for Alabama. So if he is going to continue to be an offensive contributor of that nature, by the way, so he scores 13. 15 was his career high at Alabama. As a freshman, mind you, that was 4 years ago. So he was 2 off his career high in college. And in 40 SEC games in his first 2 years at Alabama, he scored in double figures only 10 times. 25%, 10 out of 40. I think that's 25% without using my calculator. So now he's 1 for 1. He's only going to get better. And as he integrates into the lineup, if he continues to play and they get back Amari Allen and they get back Aiden Holloway and they don't lose anyone else to an injury, I don't know what they're doing at practice down there. We know that Nate Oates grinds his guys down. We know they work as hard as just about anybody in practice. Maybe time to let your foot off the gas a little bit to try to keep that team healthy and get that team together so they can actually play with the majority of their roster for the rest of the year. And I'm going to say it again. If they do, Alabama's on the short list of the best teams in the SEC, and Alabama is on the short list of teams from the SEC that can be a Final Four contender. Not predicting it. I'm telling you it's possible. And you just got a taste of it in that game Saturday night against Tennessee. Now, of course, a lot of people say it's karma, that because Alabama is clearly breaking an NCAA rule by playing a guy who put his name in the draft, stayed in the draft, which made him a pro, made him ineligible to continue as a college basketball player, and yet here he is continuing as a college basketball player. The legal system says otherwise. We'll see where it goes. But I would argue that one of the most important days in SEC basketball this season is going to be Tuesday, January 27th, which is tomorrow as I speak, in that courtroom. And if Alabama has more of a home court advantage there than it's had in its last couple of outings in Coleman Coliseum when it lost to Tennessee and Texas, then the SEC race just gets even tighter. And it gets more interesting. Because while Florida is good, certainly not as good as last year. They don't have the same backcourt. While Arkansas is good and Kentucky's coming on, they've won 5 in a row. That's the longest winning streak in the league. We didn't see Auburn coming to this extent. At least I didn't. We didn't see Texas A&M coming to this degree. Even as much as I've always believed in Bucky McMillan, I didn't see this coming. I'm not sure they did, or Mitch Cole, one of his assistants, or Neb, or all the guys he brought with him from Samford. And that's a great thing about Bucky. His core group is a family. They believe in him. They believe in what they do. They believe in how they go about trying to win because it's been proven successful. So the rest of this SEC season is going to be fantastic. If you like basketball and if you like SEC basketball, it's going to be the wild, wild west the rest of the way. So put some respect on Stephen Pearl's name. Put more respect on Bucky McMillan's name. And realize there are some new sheriffs in town, and they're not backing down. All right, that's going to do it for us today on Scarbo Knows. I'm Kevin Scarbinski, a.k.a. Scarbo. Thank you so much for watching or listening. If you're watching on YouTube at some point, we'd appreciate it if you would subscribe to the channel. As Bluto says in Animal House, don't cost nothing, but you'll get a heads up every time we put out a new episode. And we're also into the shorts game now, so putting out quick thoughts here and there throughout the week, in addition to the 2 regular podcasts, the longer podcasts every week. Thank you to you again for watching and listening. Thank you to our sponsor, Money Management Services. Let's hear from them next. You guys have a great day. See you.
Since 1992, Money Management Services in Birmingham has provided individuals and business owners with trusted, fee-only financial advice. We're more than advisors, we're your financial family. From retirement planning to tax strategies and estate planning, our team builds personalized wealth management plans tailored to your life. At Money Management Services, we treat you like family, because when you walk through our doors,